Over the past 5 years, from lecterns approximately like this one, I think every CMO on the planet has uttered the phrase, "the consumer is in control." If you were to type into your Google search bar, "I love Apple," whoa, that's a lot of hits, 3.27 million. If you were to type, "I love Starbucks," 2.7 million. And Zappos, almost 2 million shoes by mail freaks. Now then, if you were to compare those results with these major international brands, 4,700 for Exxon. And perhaps you think that's illuminating or indicting or itself pitiful. But no, that's not pitiful. You know how many hits you get for Dow Chemical Company? 3 out of 7 billion human beings. And just to put that into further context, were you to type, "I love Satan," or by my math, about 98,000 times more beloved than Dow Chemical Company. The methodology here isn't particularly rigorous, I admit that, but the results do dramatize two immutable facts of contemporary marketing life. One is that your ad messages are falling on deaf ears. It's just the way it is in a hyper-fragmented world. And the second is that nonetheless, millions and millions of people will entirely of their own volition announce to the world their affection for a brand. Not for a person, not for an artwork, not for a dessert, but for a good or service. Congratulations. People care deeply about you. Whether you like it or not, your brand is inextricably entwined in such relationships. If I were to type in, "I hate Exxon," I'd get 2.16 million hits, not counting the "I hate ExxonMobil" Facebook page. Though people are decreasingly listening to your messages, that hasn't stopped them from thinking about you and from talking about you. And each of these expressions of like, dislike, ardor, or disgust has an exponent attached to it, reflecting the outward ripples of social interaction. In short, as you have come to realize, but most likely have not come to grips with, you and your brands are being evaluated 24/7 in countless conversations that have zero to do with an ad slogan. On the contrary, they're about a brand's essential self, which behooves you, if you're a marketer, now and forever, to think very, very hard about your essential self. For more than 300 years, mass advertising mutually sustained marketers and media. Mass media needed advertising dollars to underwrite the cost of content and distribution. Marketers needed mass media to reach a mass audience. Most of that epoch, especially since the Industrial Revolution, could be characterized as the product era. Marketing focused on the product itself, sometimes more successfully than others. The last stage of that epoch, from roughly 1965 to like 5 minutes ago, was the consumer era. It was characterized by a shift in emphasis from the product to the target consumer. It aimed for the head and the heart of the target, which fit rather snugly into the four-step process of modern marketing. 1, ascertain through research what the public desires. 2, offer it. 3, create advertising designed to seduce or impress or entertain or frighten or flatter the target audience. And 4, place that advertising in media favored by the target. And why not? Where's the flaw in selling people what they wish to have by reaching them with messages that they can relate to in places they like to be? Thinking of others, isn't that what Mommy and Daddy told us to do? Yet for 3 fundamental reasons, those universal marketing practices must be discarded. For starters, and I'll be brief about this because it's no longer controversial, there is that ongoing chaos scenario, the inexorable collapse of mass media and mass marketing, and the hyper-fragmentation of their online successors. Meanwhile, DVR fast forwarding and spam filters and opt-outs have rendered audience measurement essentially a faith-based initiative. It's a confounding paradox, a revolution that in one critical respect takes us backwards. While digital tools have taken the power of the heavily capitalized few and distributed it to the many, those tools have also nearly obliterated anybody's capacity to reach the many in one fell swoop. The Industrial Revolution was revolutionary because it created efficiency through scale. The digital revolution, by contrast, has decimated scale. So, yeah, upheaval is violently altering the landscape. The second factor is ecology. Think of the marketing environment like the planetary environment. In the consumer era, business won customers by constantly, expensively burning fuel. That fuel was advertising. Drill, 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 burn, 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 sell, sell, sell. Colossal reach made advertising and promotion seem efficient, yet their effects were maddeningly transitory, a vast expense, yielding very little equity. Buy advertising, and lo and behold, sales went up. Stop advertising, and oops, sales inevitably went back down. Period. Marketing's effects in ecological terms were unsustainable. And now, amid the collapse of mass, the fuel itself is too expensive to produce. So now what? Well, the future requires a sustainable alternative. According to the Edelman Trust Barometer, in 2006, in answering what was the standard of trust, the top response was quality products and services. That's what people said was their number one yardstick for trust. By 2010, mere quality had dropped to 3 on the barometer. Number 1, cited by 83% of respondents, was transparent and honest practices. So how to demonstrate that the public's stated preference for honesty and transparency squares with their actual choices in the marketplace? The answer, conceived by my associates at IMC Squared in Dallas, the Brand Sustainability Map. Charting customer trust as the y-axis and transactions as the x-axis creates 4 quadrants. The lower left limited quadrant is the province of the losers, struggling brands with flat or declining sales and commanding very little respect of the customer. To its right is the reluctant quadrant, brands that command little respect and generate little emotion, but whose price or competitive advantages trump the consumer's misgivings. The upper left-hand quadrant is emotional. That's the home of brands that maintain respect in spite of maybe quality issues or limited distribution, high price, or other competitive disadvantages. And then finally, there is Valhalla, the upper right-hand quadrant called sustainable. In the relationship era, the big winners will be sustainable, where, not incidentally, habitués typically spend very little on advertising because they don't need it. Indifference is expensive, hostility is unaffordable, trust is priceless. The truth behind that statement was strikingly documented in the 2007 book, Firms of Endearment, about 30 companies deemed to be driven by purpose as opposed to by slavish devotion to quarterly earnings. Companies which, less paradoxically than would meet the eye, in the author's judgment, built shareholder value by not obsessing on shareholder value. Among them, Honda, Trader Joe's, the Container Store, Southwest Airlines, Wegmans, Food Markets, eBay, and more. Lo and behold, over a period of 10 years, those firms of endearment outperformed the rest of the corporate universe, wildly outperformed it, and continue to do so. Over the past 3 years, 3 economically quite shaky years, on an annualized basis, the Standard & Poor's 500 average rose 3.3%. The Firms of Endearment Index was up 21.06%. But why would this be so? Well, it's because the appeal of your brand is not limited to the intrinsic qualities of the goods and services themselves. It extends, if you were a corporation or a brand or any kind of institution, it extends to the inner you. Nestle's Pete Blackshaw famously declared that customer service is the new media department. But it's actually more than that. In a connected world wherein your every move is recorded and transmitted and Googleable in perpetuity, everything you do, every move you make, and every move you don't make is the new media department. This is an immutable fact of the relationship era that some companies, like United Airlines and Netflix, have recently learned the hard way, and which others simply knew in their bones from the moment of creation. One of them, I mean, there's a lot of them, but one of them is the outdoors outfitter Patagonia. That company donates 1% of its gross sales to environmental causes, recruits other businesses to do the same, and it engineers every aspect of its operation towards source reduction, environmental sustainability. It has progressive workplace policies, from in-house daycare to paternity leave to paid sabbaticals for environmental volunteerism, and very critically, it enforces identical factory conditions, whether the factory is in California or in Vietnam. You know, that sort of thing. None of that eco-righteousness has thus far ravaged Patagonia's bottom line. On the contrary, even amid recession, in the last 3 years, the company's revenue growth, its operating income, and market share have all reached historical highs. Profits are at 9%. Annual employee turnover is only 5%, and the percentage of rejected goods in the factories, only 1%. Let's take a slightly different sort of company, Krispy Kreme. At the height of Krispy Kreme mania in 2003, the stock reached $44 a share. 2 years ago, it languished at $1.15, despite the nearly insane devotion of its fans everywhere. That's why the human element succeeds where the Wall Street element fails. Previous management at Krispy Kreme took that kind of consumer devotion as a reason to wildly overexpand. Current management takes it as a solemn bond never to disappoint its loved ones. So they determined as a first order of business to distill brand purpose to its very essence and instill that essence in everything they do. And the result, though not quite as lofty perhaps as Patagonia's, is no less profound. And since taking that purpose-driven approach, that company's share price has crawled back. Now it's in the $6 to $9 range, depending. And this thanks to steadily growing revenue, profit, and same-store sales, which is kind of the holy grail in that business. And they've accomplished all of that virtually without advertising. Paid media represents less than 5% of the company's marketing budget. With 3.8 million Facebook followers, Krispy Kreme doesn't need big media budgets to engage with humanity. But once again, I know what you're thinking. Krispy Kreme, Scrumptious, Patagonia, hippy-dippy tree huggers, saving carbon and baby seals. I grant you those are inherently emotional bases for forging a relationship. But what about packaged goods, for example? Try plumbing the depths of a deodorant. Try looking for inspiration in perspiration. Secret is no secret. It's been around since 1956, the first deodorant devised exclusively for women. And for nearly the whole of the consumer era, Procter & Gamble employed slice-of-life narratives getting to the consumer's confidence. With Secret, you can be active, you can get nervous, you can wear silk without fear of god-awful embarrassment over the fact that you, like everyone else on earth, sweat. In 2004, the brand began to deviate from its confidence positioning, and for several years continued growth only by dint of line extensions like the clinical strength portfolio, which was a very expensive product. But by 2008, that novelty had worn out and market share had gone flatline. And that's where the IMC squared people got involved. They, who created the brand sustainability map, took note of internal deliberations at Secret to define its corporate purpose, which was this. But that purpose, once distilled by Procter Management, just kind of sat there until IMC Squared became aware of the deplorable status of women's ski jumping in the Winter Olympics. That is, there was none, which is an affront to women and to Secret's purpose of encouraging female fearlessness. So Let Her Jump was born. It all took place on a Facebook page. Over the next 6 months, 3 things happened. 1, more than 700,000 people viewed the video that IMC Squared made. Secondly, sales of Secret spiked like crazy. The clinical strength, clinical sports SKU was up 85% during the Vancouver Olympics. And the entire clinical lineup saw growth in the teens. Last fiscal year, the clinical family grew nearly 20% in sales. Oh, and one more thing, number 3, in April 2011, the International Olympic Committee decided to include ski jumping for women in the 2014 Games. It was a movement that moved people. And not because Procter & Gamble bought millions of dollars of advertising, but because a human movement based on human aspirations and human emotion inspired human beings to behave in human ways. Which gets us finally to the third remarkable factor for embracing the human element. It was always the superior model, because it's the natural order of things. Yes, counterintuitive as it may seem, a pillar of the relationship era is that it is better first to look inward than to define your brand or your business as the accumulation of the consuming public's often fickle and short-sighted tastes. Vast libraries of consumer research demonstrate that humans respond to that which we deem authentic versus phoniness, sycophancy, contrivance, pandering, and the whole panoply of negatives long associated with the term marketing. Or, in the words of the noted Danish marketing guru Polonius, to thine own self be true. Thank you.